في أكبر الكتب.
Here's a record of a pioneer experiment, Britain's first rainmakers. For a year now, reports have been coming in from America and Australia telling of new and successful ways of creating artificial rain by dropping ice on cloud formations. Pathé Pictorial's cameramen went along to get the full land-to-air story. Biggest headache is to spot the right type of rain-bearing cloud. In all, the Rainmaker's plane covered 300 miles, flying north from Croydon and over Leicester, Birmingham and Manchester. Chemists, weathermen and agricultural experts, all concerned in the continual battle against the fear of drought, form their judgment of the possibilities opened up by the experiment on this start-to-finish film.
Yesterday, Lynmouth was a peaceful holiday resort. Today, it is a ruin. Pathé cameraman Bill Jordan was on the spot soon after floods had swept down from the hills to smash the little town. And this is his story. I knew very little about Lynmouth before I arrived. When I looked around, I was almost glad I didn't. Friends had sent me picture postcards of Watersmeet, a beauty spot only a few miles away. It looked very pretty and quiet. It was this stream swollen with rain that became a raging torrent, and it was these boulders that were swept down to Lynmouth to destroy shops, hotels and homes. In one single night, the main street had become a wild, churning river. It was dark red from the Devon soil. When I was there, nobody could tell for certain how many had been killed. We knew it was at least 22. I talked to some of the people who had lost their homes and their friends. They were still bewildered, still unable to grasp that their little town, which some of the locals used to call Honeymoon Town, was now just rubble. They told me of the awful speed with which the flood struck and of the dreadful sound of the water roaring and smashing its way through their homes.
Geoengineering is a method to counterbalance the effects of global warming owing to the increased concentrations of atmospheric greenhouse gases. Geoengineering or climate engineering generally falls into two specific categories, the first of which is called carbon dioxide removal, which, as the name suggests, is basically capturing carbon from the atmosphere and storing it. The second method is what's known as solar radiation management. Now, solar radiation management differs from carbon dioxide removal in that what you're trying to do is reflect an additional amount of sunlight back out to space. So solar radiation management is basically trying to reflect sunlight back out to space, leading to a cooling to counterbalance the increases in greenhouse gases. There's been various different solar radiation management schemes that have been mooted as being possible, all of which are basically trying to reflect sunlight back out to space. One of the most popular is to inject some reflective material into the stratosphere. This mimics really the impact of volcanic eruptions, which have been shown on the observational record to cool climate. There's another method which is artificial brightening of low-lying stratocumulus clouds. If you inject some aerosol into these low-lying stratocumulus clouds, you can brighten them. And of course, when you get a brightening of the planet, you're reflecting more sunlight back out to space. Those are the two most popular solar radiation management techniques that are in the press at the moment. Carbon dioxide removal is often thought of as a relatively benign kind of geoengineering because you're simply reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's not quite as simple as that because a lot of the land that would be used for general agricultural practices like they are at the moment would have to be converted into land for specific growing of biomass burning. So there's certainly some ecological implications that are associated with CDR. Solar radiation management, the main conclusions that are coming out of the solar radiation management studies is that you cannot get a no temperature change Earth, no global mean net temperature change, without there being some regional side effects.
A rapidly growing population coupled with global warming means that water is increasingly set to become the world's most precious commodity. One of the solutions to this problem can be found within clouds.
An average rain cloud contains about 8 million tons of rainwater, and therefore there's a vast quantity of untapped fresh water in the sky, and this is where cloud seeding comes in, to address the growing needs for water around the world.
Most rainmaking techniques used today originated back in 1946, when scientists discovered that by dropping particles of a chemical called silver iodide into cloud tops, they could trigger rainfall. Since then, countries all over the world have experimented with different ways to squeeze rain out of the clouds. China spends more on cloud seeding than any other country in the world.
I'll put the radar on here in the aircraft, see if we can find out the distance to that cell band.
Yeah, if you can see what the distance is, that would be...
Dr. Brunjis is in Mali, West Africa, to test out a new technique he's devised with colleagues at the National Centre for Atmospheric Research. It involves the use of pyrotechnic flares to deliver a special seeding material into the base of a cloud.
These are the so-called hygroscopic flares. They consist of salts inside. And as we burn them, the smoke produces the particles, the salt particles, that will then be taken up into the cloud and participate in the rain formation.
Once released into the cloud's updraft, each one of the hygroscopic salt particles becomes a seed around which a single water droplet can form. These droplets collide with each other and grow, eventually becoming heavy enough to fall out of the cloud as rain.
Oh, there's a rainbow up front here.
Weather modification today is an increasingly precise science which can reap huge benefits for the many countries that suffer from severe water shortages.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm Neil. It's raining again, Sam. I've had enough. It's been drizzling. That's raining lightly all week.
I know what you mean, Neil. Living in a wet country like Britain, I sometimes wish I could push a magic button and stop it raining.
And ironically, people living in hot, dry countries need rain but don't get it. If only we could control the weather.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Neil, because you're not the first person to have that idea. In this programme, we'll be hearing about cloud seeding and geoengineering, two controversial methods scientists are using to manipulate or change the weather. And as usual, we'll be learning some new vocabulary as well.
Anything that stops it drizzling sounds good to me, Sam.
I hate to disappoint you, Neil, but these ideas involve making more, not less rain. We'll learn the details soon, but first I have a question for you about the wettest place in the world. A village which gets nearly 12 metres of rain a year. But where is it? Is the wettest village on Earth found in A. Ireland, B. New Zealand, or C. India?
Well, it rains a lot in Ireland, doesn't it? So I'll say that's where the wettest place on Earth is.
Okay, Neil, we'll find out if that's the correct answer later in the programme.
The first type of weather manipulation we'll hear about is a way of getting snow and rain out of clouds, known as cloud seeding. Airplanes fly through the clouds and spray chemicals to make water particles freeze and stick together as snowflakes. These then fall as snow, which builds up during winter before melting in spring to help water crops.
Listen as Charmaine Cozier, presenter of BBC World Service programme The Inquiry, speaks with Professor Katja Friedrich, an atmospheric scientist at the University of Colorado.
The first cloud seeding experiments took place in the 1940s. In the years since, scientists are often accused of meddling with nature.
People are thinking, yeah, you're putting some substances in the atmosphere that should not be there. Usually I respond and say, every time you get into your car, every time you get on an airplane, you put substances in the air that don't belong, so you're also playing God.
Because everyone needs water, cloud seeding is becoming more and more popular, with scientists from over 50 countries using the method to extract rain from clouds. But some critics accuse these scientists of meddling with nature, trying to change something which it's not their responsibility to change.
In other words, they're accused of playing God, acting as if they have unlimited power and can do whatever they want.
Unlike cloud seeding, the next type of weather modification has never been tested and is still just a theory. Solar geoengineering aims to reduce global warming by reflecting sunlight away from the Earth back into space. This involves putting tiny particles called aerosols into the stratosphere, the band of sky 20 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, about twice as high as airplanes fly.
Although it's never been tested, the method is controversial, as Charmaine Cozier discussed with Harvard University Professor of Engineering, David Keith, for BBC World Service's The Inquiry.
How controversial is this area?
There's lots of controversy around solar geosharing, and for good reason. People are, I think, sensibly scared that this could provide an excuse that allows countries or companies to avoid doing the work that has to be done to cut emissions. But in fact, controversy has really waxed and waned over time. So in the early work on climate change in the 1960s and 70s and early 80s, these ideas were just part of the way we talked about what might happen about climate change. And then as climate change became more politically central, say in the 90s and 2000s, it was really a taboo.
David Keith believes that geoengineering could provide an excuse for inaction on climate change, a reason for countries to explain why they did not take action.
He says controversy over the method has waxed and waned, an idiom connected with the cycle of the moon, which describes something that increases then decreases over time. In the 1960s, for example, geoengineering was uncontroversial, but by the 1990s it had become taboo, a subject that is avoided for social or religious reasons.
While these ideas to change the weather have potential benefits, other suggestions, for example, to position a giant floating mirror between the Earth and the Sun, are highly controversial. Although personally, I think the idea of a giant floating umbrella above Britain would be good.
Well, just think, there are even rainier places to live, Neil, as I asked in my question earlier. In which country is the world's rainiest village?
I guessed it was in Ireland.
Which was the wrong answer, I'm afraid. In fact, Mawsynram, the world's wettest village, is in the Khasi Hills of northeastern India. With around 12 metres of rain a year, I guess it's not somewhere you'll be visiting, Neil. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned, starting with drizzling, which means raining lightly.
If you're meddling, you're trying to change something which is not your responsibility or without being asked to.
Someone who is playing God is acting as if they control everything and can do whatever they want.
An excuse is a reason you give to explain why you did something wrong.
If something waxed and waned, it grew stronger, then weaker over time.
And finally, a taboo is a subject that's avoided for social or religious reasons. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English
from BBC Learning English.